At exactly 02:17 hours on April 22, 2026, in the ink-black waters of the narrowest point of the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point just 21 nautical miles wide, where a fifth of the world's oil once flowed like a liquid heartbeat, a sonar technician aboard an MH-60R Romeo Seahawk helicopter with call sign Triton 61 heard something that made his blood run cold. A frequency anomaly. A transient acoustic signal lasting exactly 1.4 seconds. The kind of sound that a trained ACQ-SYS operator recognizes immediately. The hydraulic hiss of a torpedo tube hatch opening, but not firing, loading, and then silence. Whatever was below them was not attacking. It was working, methodically, deliberately, planting something into the seafloor at the precise coordinates of the main shipping lane. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy had just made the most audacious move of the entire conflict. Hidden beneath a swarm of 47 Boghammer fast attack boats running surface harassment patterns against the USS Paul Ignatius DDG 117. Using the combined noise signature of nearly 600 outboard motors to acoustically blind American passive sonar arrays, an Iranian Kilo-class submarine, hull designated Iris Fateh, had maneuvered to a depth of 22 meters and begun deploying a belt of MDM-6 bottom influence mines. Pressure activated, magnetic influence triggered, designed to detonate against the double-hulled keel of very large crude carriers at a depth where conventional minesweepers cannot reach. The Iranians had been planning this operation for 14 days. They called it Operation Simorgh, named after the mythical Persian firebird. The plan was simple. If the U.S. Navy's blockade was choking Iran, Iran would choke the entire world. At 02:19 hours, Triton 61's ALFS, the airborne low-frequency sonar, dropped its active pinger to 80 meters. The return pulse hit the hull of the Kilo at 22 meters and came back in 0.3 seconds. The contact was real, solid, 210 meters in length, and moving at 2.1 knots on a heading of 284 degrees. The exact bearing of the shipping lane centerline. The sonar operator, Petty Officer 2nd Class Marcus Webb, immediately keyed his ICS. Triton 61 to Paul Ignatius actual. Subsurface contact, possible submarine, contact Romeo. Classifying. Simultaneously, every sensor on the Boghammer swarm lit up on the AN/SPY-1D radar array of the Paul Ignatius. 47 surface contacts, some closing at 48 knots, spread across a 12-mile arc. This was the trap. The fast boats were not there to attack. They were there to force the American destroyer to focus every EW asset, every weapon system, and every available combat brain on the surface threat, while the real weapon, 22 meters below the surface, completed its work in the dark. The commanding officer of the Paul Ignatius, Commander Rachel Vargas, had 3 seconds to make the most consequential tactical decision of her career. She had a confirmed submarine contact in a critical shipping lane. She had 47 armed IRGC fast boats closing her position. She had a ship of 283 crew members, and she was standing in the Strait of Hormuz in the middle of a war. She picked up the SSIXS handset and did 2 things simultaneously. First, she ordered her Combat Information Center to go to General Quarters. Second, she transmitted a priority flash to NavCent. Submarine contact Romeo. Active mine laying suspected. Request immediate subsurface support. The klaxon screamed through every compartment of the Paul Ignatius. In the Combat Information Center, every tactical display shifted to wartime configuration. On the Aegis console, the SPY-1D track file on Contact Romeo pulsed red. 280 nautical miles away, in the Combat Information Center of CVN-79 John F. Kennedy, the priority flash hit the battle group's warfare commander like a thunderbolt. Within 90 seconds, Admiral Thomas Crane had authorized the immediate launch of 2 EA-18G Growlers from VFA 134 and ordered the Virginia-class submarine USS Vermont SSN 792, already running submerged patrol at periscope depth 40 nautical miles to the south, to accelerate to maximum speed on a direct intercept course for Contact Romeo. Vermont acknowledged with a single encrypted ping. She was already moving. What the IRGC Command Center in Bandar Abbas did not know, could not know, was that the USS Vermont had been pre-positioned to that exact patrol box 48 hours earlier, based on NSA SIGINT intercepts flagging anomalous IRGC submarine communications. The Americans had not been caught off guard. They had been waiting. The EA-18G Growlers, call signs Havoc 11 and Havoc 12, left the Kennedy's waste catapults at 02:23 hours at full military power, climbing through 400 knots in the first 20 seconds. Their ALQ-218 tactical jamming receivers were already sweeping the electromagnetic spectrum across the Boghammer formation. What the Growlers found was extraordinary. The fastboat swarm was not using standard IRGC tactical radio frequencies. They were operating on a distributed frequency hopping network running across 14 discrete bands, changing codes every 400 milliseconds. A system U.S. signals intelligence had never before seen deployed by the IRGC in an active engagement. Havoc 11's electronic warfare officer immediately tagged the signature and transmitted it back to the Kennedy's SSEE Increment F signals exploitation system. The assessment came back in under 60 seconds. The communications architecture matched a system assessed to have been transferred to Iran by a third-party state actor within the last 90 days. This was not improvised. This was state-sponsored. And whatever nation had handed Tehran this technology had just made themselves a party to the mining of the world's most critical waterway.
At 02:26 hours, the Boghammer swarm made its first coordinated move. Not an attack, a maneuver. All 47 boats simultaneously turned 15 degrees to starboard and began a slow, deliberate encirclement of the Paul Ignatius at a range of 4,000 yards. They were not closing, they were herding, buying time. Every minute the Paul Ignatius spent managing the surface threat was another minute the Kilo below had to complete its mine belt. By NavSense assessment, the Iris Fateh carried a payload capacity of 24 mines in its external keel mine belt. At a deployment speed of 2.1 knots, with one mine dropped every 90 seconds, the submarine had potentially been operational for 7 minutes before Triton 6-1's detection. That meant as many as 4 to 6 MDM-6 mines were already resting on the seafloor of the main shipping channel. 6 pressure-sensitive, magnetically triggered contact mines. 6 silent reasons the Strait of Hormuz could remain closed, not for weeks, but for months, possibly years. Commander Vargas made the call. She ordered the Paul Ignatius to reverse course at 20 knots, breaking the herding maneuver, and simultaneously authorized the launch of an Mk-54 lightweight torpedo from her port side triple tubes. Not a firing solution against the Kilo, a warning shot. The Mk-54 ran hot, straight, and normal for 800 yards, then went active with its sonar pinger, broadcasting a deafening active pulse directly at the Kilo's hull at close range. The message to the Iranian submarine commander was unmistakable. "We know you are there. We know what you are doing. Stop." The Kilo stopped moving. At 02:29 hours, Contact Romeo went dead quiet. The Iris Fateh had shut down her propulsion, her systems, her noise. The Kilo-class submarine, designed in the Soviet era and upgraded with Iranian IRGC modifications, was reverting to her primary survival strategy: absolute silence. She was going to drift and wait. The Iranian commander, Captain Second Rank Davoud Kashani, believed he had one card left to play. The fast boats above would keep the Americans occupied long enough for the mines already deployed to do their work once global shipping resumed. He didn't need to escape. He just needed to survive until dawn. He had underestimated the USS Vermont. At 02:31 hours, 40 nautical miles south, Vermont went to 400 feet and pushed her GES-9G reactor plant to 90% power. She was making better than 30 knots, a speed that no surface ship radar can detect, and no conventional towed array sonar can reliably track in the acoustic clutter of a war zone. Her BSY-2 combat system had already developed a preliminary firing solution for Contact Romeo, based solely on the data relayed from Triton 6-1. Vermont was not approaching as a warning. She was approaching as an executioner, holding a loaded trigger and waiting for the order that nobody wanted to give. At the same time, NavCent activated the one asset that nobody had briefed to the public. Embedded in the belly of a Navy P-8A Poseidon circling at 28,000 feet overhead was an AN/AES-1 airborne mine detection system, transmitting multispectral laser pulses into the shallow water column directly along the shipping lane's centerline. Within 6 minutes of activation, the Poseidon's sensors had confirmed 5 discrete bottom contact anomalies, each one measuring between 1.2 and 1.4 meters in length, perfectly round, perfectly spaced at 400-meter intervals along the main channel. 5 MDM-6 mines on the seafloor of the world's most critical oil shipping lane. A minefield that, if left in place, would close the Strait of Hormuz to commercial shipping for 6 months, regardless of any ceasefire, regardless of any diplomatic agreement, regardless of any deal negotiated in Washington or Islamabad or Geneva. The mines do not care about politics. They care about the magnetic signature of a fully laden supertanker passing 4 meters above them.
At 0237 hours, NavCent transmitted the most critical message of the night. Not to the Paul Ignatius, not to Vermont, not to the Growlers, but to a 12-man Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal Mobile Unit team aboard 2 rigid inflatable boats holding station in the shadow of a rocky shoal 3 nautical miles west of the detection zone. Nav Ode Mob Unit 5, codenamed Sandbar Alpha, had been pre-positioned for exactly this contingency 48 hours earlier. The mission directive was 3 words: execute, recover, sanitize. What followed was 14 minutes of the most dangerous maritime EOD operation of the conflict. 2 RIBE teams running blacked out at 35 knots, navigating by GPS-referenced mine position data transmitted directly from the P-8A overhead. Each team responsible for deploying Mk-30 influence sweep gear and Mk-7 neutralizing charges. The Boghammer swarm was still holding its encirclement of the Paul Ignatius, now 6 nautical miles distant, with 0 visibility on the EOD teams operating in the shadow of the shallow ridge. The Iranian fastboat commanders did not know the trap had been reversed. They believed they were still dictating the tempo. On the surface, it looked like a standoff. Below the surface, the Americans were systematically dismantling Iran's most dangerous strategic card, 1 mine at a time. At 0241 hours, Sandbar Alpha's lead diver, Senior Chief Petty Officer James Okafor, entered the water at a point 18 inches above a live MDM-6 mine and began the neutralization sequence using a lightweight neutralizer charge with a 4-minute time delay fuse. The mine was a Soviet-designed device, but with visible Iranian machining modifications, new triggering electronics, a secondary magnetic influence sensor, and an anti-handling circuit that, if the mine had been disturbed even slightly before the neutralizer was fully seated, would have detonated it immediately. Senior Chief Okafor had trained for this exact mine variant in a classified simulation at Explosive Ordnance Disposal School Eglin 9 months earlier. He moved with the calm precision of a surgeon performing open-heart surgery in a blackout. The water temperature was 28 degrees Celsius. Visibility was 0. He was working entirely by touch and by the red-filtered beam of a dive light held in his teeth. At 0244 hours, the first neutralizer detonated, a muffled, concussive thump that sent a column of white water 20 feet into the dark Hormuz night. Then the second at 90 seconds. Then the third, the fourth, and the fifth. 5 mines, 5 neutralizations, 5 fewer reasons the global economy would collapse when the sun rose over the Persian Gulf. Simultaneously, 800 meters to the south, the Havoc 11 Growler executed a precision ALQ-99 jamming run across all 14 frequency bands of the Boghammer network simultaneously, flooding the IRGC fastboat command net with impenetrable electronic noise. In the span of 8 seconds, 47 Iranian fast attack boats went tactically deaf and blind. Their encrypted radio nets dissolved into static, their targeting data links flatlined. The carefully orchestrated swarm became 47 individual boats with no coordination, no communications, and no orders. At 02:51 hours, Commander Vargas received word from NavCent that all 5 mines had been neutralized. She immediately ordered her EW suite to broadcast a directional message on the Kilo's known acoustic frequency band, a signal that was not a threat, not a demand, but a single encrypted data burst that translated, once decoded by the Iris Fateh's signals officer, to the precise GPS coordinates of each neutralized mine position. The message to Captain Kashani was deliberate and devastating. "We found them all. We removed them all. We know your boat. We know your position. And we chose not to sink you."
The Iris Fateh did not surface. She did not respond. She slowly, carefully, at 1.8 knots, began moving south toward deeper water, every second of her withdrawal tracked by Vermont's BSY-2 system with the cold indifference of a predator that has already decided not to hunt today. The Boghammer swarm, their command net restored only partially by switching to backup UHF frequencies, read the situation and broke formation within 90 seconds, scattering back toward Iranian coastal waters at full speed, as if the invisible hand of American electronic dominance had simply switched them off. In the coming hours, NavCent's press release would confirm only that U.S. naval forces conducted maritime security operations in the Strait of Hormuz. No mention of mines, no mention of the Kilo, no mention of Senior Chief Okafor floating alone in black water 18 inches above a live, pressure-triggered weapon. The Strait of Hormuz was quiet again, but the seafloor of the world's most critical shipping channel would carry the memory of that night for years. In the acoustic databases of every navy that matters, in the classified after-action reports that would shape mine warfare doctrine for the next decade, and in the nightmares of the tanker captains who would eventually sail above the coordinates where 5 Iranian mines had rested on the sand. The war for the Strait of Hormuz is not won with aircraft carriers or political ultimatums. It is won by the people nobody broadcasts on the news. The sonar operator who heard a 1.4-second whisper in black water, the EOD diver who went under alone and came back up, and the submarine commander who held her torpedoes and chose dominance over destruction. The IRGC lost 14 mines worth of strategic leverage tonight, but they have hundreds more. And somewhere in the shipyards of Bandar Abbas, the next Kilo is being loaded, the next swarm is being briefed, and the frequency-hopping technology that appeared in the Strait tonight was not built in Iran. It was transferred by someone who wants this war to last. The question you need to ask yourself is not whether the US Navy can handle what Iran has deployed today. The question is whether it can handle what Iran is being equipped with for tomorrow. Comment your answer below, because that answer determines the future of every barrel of oil that keeps your civilization running.